I'm on the phone with Raegan Weber from the organization ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. And so I guess, Raegan, you had, before we talked, and we've exchanged a few emails, you kind of felt like you've read my stories about specifically Tom McMillan in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned before we went on the recording, Tom is a new member, and he has not, at this point, to your knowledge anyway, attended any of your meetings.
Actually, I don't know that he's signed up to be a member. I know he's a new legislator, and he has not attended an ALEC meeting in the past.
Okay.
That's what I know for sure.
All right, well, I guess, okay, so one thing I guess I'm curious about then is why, if he's a new member, I did see a press release that you had on your website. It wasn't it was probably one of your underlings, I assume.
Could be.
Talking about, Michigan withdrawing from some kind of environmental pact. Does that sound familiar?
Let me go to my website.
Here, Caitlin, here it is. Caitlin Buss, it's in my article. Legislators urge governors to withdraw from Regional Climate Initiative. Today, Representative Tom McMillan of Michigan introduced a resolution urging his state's governor to withdraw from Michigan's continued participation in the Midwestern Greenhouse Gas Reduction Accord.
Okay, then Tom McMillan is a member.
Okay.
He's a brand new member, then I didn't know about it. If we're communicating it, then I haven't met him yet as a member, and I do know that he's never been to an ALEC meeting.
Okay, but he is introducing. Now I assume the legislation he introduced would have been something that came directly from ALEC, since you're putting it out in your press release.
We have EPA regulation. Yes.
Okay, and withdrawing from that Midwestern Greenhouse Gas Reduction Accord, is that just something general, or they mentioned a bill here, H.R. 277.
Uh-huh.
Would that be a template that Tom took away from an ALEC meeting, or got through the mail, or by email, or some other means?
He probably accessed our model legislation library, which is a compilation of policies that our public sector board has adopted, in which case that bill, it may not be identical. I haven't compared the two, but he could have used ours as a base to use his, or it could be the identical bill. I just haven't compared the two. Many times our legislators will use and we call them policies because it's just a starting point. It's a library for them to use. They get other ideas from other states this way, and the first change may happen when they work with their state constitution. So it may have to be tweaked to fit in with their state constitution. And then it may change again as it goes through the state legislative process. In addition, they could change it and just use part of the policy or extract some of the language that they like to make it their own. So he could have used exactly our language. I'm not sure. I'd have to compare the two. But at some point, he probably used our language as a base for his. Okay.
So you've read my articles on the Rochester Citizen, or at least glanced at them, I assume.
I have glanced through them. That is correct.
Okay. So I guess I want to give you an opportunity. If you feel like I got anything wrong about ALEC, what it does, how it does it,
right.
Tell me what I might have wrong.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about ALEC, and let's just start from there. ALEC is a nonpartisan, public-private membership organization. And the reason why I say nonpartisan is we have no political distinction. We have both Democrats and Republicans. A third of our members are Democrats. And that's very important to notice. Why we have more conservative-leaning views, and I say conservative, it's from a fiscally conservative point of view. Conservative does not equal Republican. And I think that's very important for people to understand. That's an ideology, not a political party distinction. Okay? We have not worked with any political parties in any state on any issue. We support the policies that fit in with free markets, limited government, and I'm doing well. Free market.
One more, right?
We'll go there. I haven't had no coffee, Bruce. And so, I think people need to understand that we're a resource to legislative members. The majority of state legislators are part-time legislators. And while they serve their constituencies all year round, they don't have, being a part-time legislator, and these legislatures a lot of them don't have full-time staff. So what we do is 3 times a year we have meetings where our legislators can come together and learn about best practices, get ideas from other states. Hey, I have this issue in my state. What has worked in your state? And it's a sharing of ideas. And Bruce, I mean, I'm sure you've been to, you're a journalist. You go to journalism conferences, right?
Right.
And you share with other journalists maybe new technologies, new research, and things like that. Same principle here. And where better to get information from than policy experts in the field that they are going to regulate? I mean, we have to keep in mind that in a free market society, that we don't just dictate laws. They need to get the best information possible about the issues that affect our economy, our citizens, and things like that. We also need to keep in mind that ALEC does deal with issues that the private sector doesn't really have anything to do with, voter ID being one of them. That's an election issue. It affects our legislators, and they want to maintain the integrity of our voting system. There are issues that our private sector and public sector disagree on. That has happened numerous times in history. I mean, you get a few hundred people in a room together, Bruce, and how many people are going to agree?
Well, give me an example of an issue like that where the public and private sector people disagreed.
I'll give you the best example. We have a problem with Obamacare. We disagree with the federal mandate that everybody should purchase health care. And the pharmaceutical companies supported Obamacare. It's public. It's out there. They've made comments on it. It's in the news. You just have to Google it and do the research. I mean, that is really one of our most recent examples of the pharmaceutical companies disagreed with ALEC on that position, disagreed with our public sector.
Okay.
And I think that's one that really gets missed a lot because everybody says, oh, the pharmaceutical companies, you know, they're driving ALEC. Of course they're not. And that's a perfect example of saying, no, they're not. We have 1,800 legislative members as opposed to nearly 300 private sector. And our private sector members are made up of foundations, nonprofits, and businesses.
You mentioned that you give legislators advice. So what organizations, what do you consider to be the expert organizations that you rely upon to, and I would like specific names if you can think of them, that you rely upon to give information to the legislators that belong to ALEC?
Oh, you want to know policy experts that have come to our meetings and done...
Well, or not names of experts. I'm right. Talking about, you know, a name of an organization that, let's say, the expert might belong to.
Well, we have the NFIB is a member of ours. National Foundation of Individual Business, is that right?
National Foundation of I'm not sure if it's individual or independent.
It's not
business.
Individual.
I think it's independent businesses.
Independent businesses.
Yeah.
NFIB, who represents small businesses all across the United States. I mean, they're you know, that's part of the education there.
What about someplace like the Cato Institute, or would you say you have? Most people don't know, but there's, you know, these organizations are kind of divided between conservative and liberal organizations.
Right.
Would you? Do you have any? Well, let me ask you this: since you say you're nonpartisan, do you have any liberal organizations, or what you would consider to be liberal organizations, that advise ALEC?
Now you're diving into some place where I would need to get back to you on that, only because you're diving into my membership list a bit.
Okay. Well, I'm saying, okay, I mean, organizations that are known to me would be, that are conservative, that I would consider to be conservative, would be the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute.
Right.
Do you have, I guess my question, when you get back to me, and you can do it by email if you want, I'd like to know if you have any organizations like that I might be able to say, oh, I know that's a liberal organization. All right, you know, it might be, or I could look it up and say, oh, yeah, that's definitely a liberal organization.
What you're asking me for, though, is somebody that might go against our Jeffersonian principles. So we wouldn't have anyone educating, or we wouldn't do education briefs or anything like that if it didn't fit in with the ALEC principles of free markets and limited government, okay?
Okay, so what you're saying basically is you probably don't have any organizations like that because they don't meet your Jeffersonian ideals. If
they fit in with our Jeffersonian ideals, I do. If their point of view fits in with that, I do.
Okay.
And I just, that's where I have to stand. And I may be able to get back to you, but let me check.
Okay, but I guess the point being, if you're saying you're giving information to your legislative members that is, quote, nonpartisan, then it would seem that there might be, hopefully, at least one liberal organization that might meet your criteria.
No, you're going back to liberal and conservative. That's an ideology.
Right, but you said...
That's my point. Our ideology is Jeffersonian conservative principles. Jeffersonian principles are conservative.
Okay.
So we do have a third that are Democrats. So you're confusing liberal with Democrat versus liberal with conservative. See what I'm saying?
All right.
If they fit in with our principles of our organization, we are more than happy to work with them, consider them, and consider their ideas for our members. Okay. But they have to fit in with our principles and what we stand for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'll try to be more careful in my wording going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said a third of your members, your active members, they consider themselves to be, I guess, well, I think you did use the word Democrat in that case. Okay, are they, when the third that you say are Democrats, are they currently, are they active elected officials, or are they retired?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All of our 1,800 legislators are all active legislators. Our members are active legislators. Once they go inactive, they become alumni.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right, so what else do I need to know about ALEC that might help me more accurately represent what you do?
Well, I think it's important to note that I think there's been some... And have you actually gone to see my statements that we released on March 30th?
Your press release?
Yeah. Did you get a copy of that?
I have glanced through it the same way you glanced through my story.
I think that people need to understand that it's okay to have a private membership organization for legislators to have a resource. We don't pass laws. We don't lobby. We don't do any of that. Our legislators do that, and they do that very well for themselves. We're just a resource for them to help them bring back good ideas, and we don't have the monopoly on good ideas either. But we have been the ones that have collected them. And I think it's also important to note that there's two other state legislative organizations. There's NCSL and there's CSG. NCSL, all legislators are members of NCSL because they have line items in state budgets to go to NCSL. So all legislators are members of NCSL. Whereas we, being a private membership organization, they don't use tax dollars to be a member of ours. They don't use tax dollars to travel to our meetings, nothing like that.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think we need to keep in mind that, being a private organization is actually a good thing and distances us from the tax dollar issue.
Okay, I'm looking at your press release right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I see you apparently had a problem with the report that NPR did.
Oh, yeah. Well, in the first paragraph of the NPR report, she says we're this secretive organization, and yet when she came to our office, I let her in here. I had no problem. She called me. I said, absolutely, you can come on in and meet with us. And we met with her for 45 minutes. I'm not sure what secretive organization meets with anybody.
Well, I think what I would interpret as being secretive is kind of like you alluded to before, is I gather you are very big on, and I've read some of your stuff about government transparency.
Right.
Okay. If I were to, let's say, ask you, Raegan, would you release the name of your legislative members and your private members? What would you tell me?
We're a private membership organization,
okay,
just like your local Kiwanis Club, and we are not government related.
Okay.
We don't use taxpayer dollars. We're asking for government transparency when using taxpayer dollars.
Right.
I think that's a perfect thing to keep in mind.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We're not a government agency. We are a private 501c3H organization.
Would ALEC ever I mean, maybe this goes against your Jeffersonian principles, but let's take what happened in the Gulf as an example with BP. Obviously, there was, in my opinion anyway, there's a lack of regulation that probably led to that whole fiasco. Would ALEC ever propose increasing oversight or government regulation in the face of a disaster like that? Or would that just go against your Jeffersonian principles?
It's tough for me to comment on that because of without proper analyzation or being involved in any of that issue. It's tough for me to make that comment. We think that things need to be looked at. We certainly wouldn't feel that the way the Obama administration went so far as to put a moratorium on all those businesses, that went way too far. So we do believe in federalism, a proper balance between federal and state government. So that would be, as long as it didn't hurt businesses and that kind of thing, we would have to look at that. And what we would do is look at the proposals and look at the policies being proposed and see if they did or did not fit in with our policies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we probably, and ALEC as an organization, we don't propose policies to fix a situation like that. We have policies that have been adopted, and if our members use those policies, we obviously support that. If somebody proposes a policy, for example, like the Obama administration did, that was going to hurt businesses, then we would obviously oppose something like that. But it's our members who bring the solutions.
Okay. So another issue, it looks like, I'm reading your press release again, that you're involved in is voter ID. Okay, that's a pretty big issue.
Well, we're not really involved.
Okay, but you're putting forth opinions, at least, about how voter ID should be, whether it should be adopted or not.
Actually, this is what that press release aimed to clarify. I had a person ask me about a policy that's listed on our website, and I was more than happy to answer the question. We are not working on an initiative for voter ID. We are not pushing the issue. I simply responded to a question and said, ALEC's policy is using a photo ID will help reduce the risk of voter fraud. That's as simple as it was, and it has gotten blown way out of control.
Mm-hmm.
I have a member in Ohio who did not use our voter ID. Because, and I've spoken to him, I had him speak to the New York Times recently. He said, Raegan, I did not use ALEC's voter ID policy because I didn't think it went far enough.
Well, that brings up...
He used his own, but I got accused of it being mine. And that's the whole thing, is that our members could be using our policies, and I don't know it because they haven't called and told me that they are.
Right, because they can just go on your website, log in, and download something.
They can access that at any time.
Right, and so they may do that, and you would have no idea that they were doing that necessarily.
Right.
Okay. Well, would you I mean, to me, I don't think voter fraud is a big problem. I think election fraud is a big problem. Would you would ALEC is ALEC involved in anything involving election fraud versus voter fraud?
No.
Okay.
If we have a policy on that, I'd have to go find it. What we are involved in is, if you go to our website, you see there's an initiatives drop-down.
Uh-huh.
Those are the major initiatives that we are involved in, and we are happy and proud to say we're involved in those. We're happy and proud to say that some of those things are our policies that you're looking at. But we are not involved in any voter or election issue at this moment. Nothing.
Okay.
Our members are using it, they're using it.
Okay. All right, well, I know you have to run to a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to do before you have to go is, can we set up our video interview in Cincinnati before you have to run?
Video?
Yeah.
Wow, you sure I'm pretty enough for video?
I've never met you. I don't know how pretty you are. Anyway, I'm going to stop the recording now because I think we're done with it.